I received the divorce documents through email while I was still stationed in the desert. 13 years of marriage ended with a PDF file. My name is Nathan. I am 42 years old and serve as a staff sergeant with the 82nd Airborne. I had been deployed in Kandahar for 4 months when Emily decided she had enough of waiting. The subject line of the email said, "Let's be adults about this." The message was brief, only 3 sentences. She had already submitted the divorce petition, completely withdrawn money from our shared account, and moved her new boyfriend Ryan into our Spokane home. I read the email twice, then closed my laptop. I took a shower in the communal bathroom, dressed for my shift, and did not share a word with anyone. Later, when I returned to my bunk that night, I replied with a single word: understood. No arguments, no pleading, no threats. My bunkmate Mike noticed something was wrong and asked, "You okay, man?" Without looking up from his book, I simply replied, "Just some stuff back home." And he nodded. That was the end of it. Military men know when to respect silence. Honestly, I wasn't shocked. Half a year before the deployment, things had already shifted, small changes that built up. Emily stopped asking about my day, started working late hours at the dental office answering phones, and hit the gym 3 times weekly, but never seemed to sweat. She had new clothes, new friends I never met, and new passwords on her phone. I chose not to confront her or invade her privacy by checking messages or tracking her movements. That's not who I am. Yet I wasn't oblivious, so I quietly took some steps of my own, albeit nothing drastic. I took serious precautions to protect what mattered most. I stored crucial papers in a storage unit across town, including my birth certificate, marriage certificate, license, and house deed, all with only my name on them. Thanks to the VA loan and military benefits paperwork, I was able to do this securely. I also placed my grandfather's watch and my mother's old silver in the same unit, safeguarding sentimental belongings. To prepare myself financially, I opened another bank account at a different institution and began redirecting a portion of my pay there. It was not enough for her to notice, but sufficient so I wouldn't be starting from nothing if things turned bad. The night before deployment, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her eyes were dry, as if she were bidding farewell to a colleague rather than a husband heading into battle. I should have seen it then, but part of me held on to hope that I was mistaken. What she didn't realize was that I had already prepared for this moment. What she never understood was that I never initiate conflicts, but I always see them through to the end. I met Emily at a friend's barbecue in 2010. I was home between deployments, staying with my friend Jake in Spokane. Emily was finishing nursing school, but ended up working in an administrative position at a dental office instead. "Less stressful," she said. We were married 8 months later. Emily would often say she was proud of my service even though she never fully grasped it. Her father managed a bank, and her brother was a pharmacist. No one in her family had a military background. She asked me when I planned to get a real job, not realizing that after 15 years, the Army was my profession, not merely something I was passing time with. We bought our home in 2014. The house was nothing extravagant, but it was ours. It had 3 bedrooms, a small yard, and was located in a calm neighborhood. My name was the only one listed on the mortgage since the VA loan was under my name. However, I added Emily to the deed because that is what married couples do. They share everything. My father passed away 1 year after we got married from a heart attack while shoveling snow. My mother died 3 years later from lung cancer, even though she never smoked a single day in her life. They left me some money, not a large inheritance, but enough so that Emily and I could pay off our student debts and still keep some savings for emergencies. During our marriage, I was deployed 4 times, twice to Iraq and twice to Afghanistan. Each time I returned, Emily seemed slightly more withdrawn and restless, as if she was trying to play a part she no longer fit into. I remember when I mentioned the possibility of re-enlisting for another 4 years, she told me, "I am tired of being alone all the time." I understood her feelings, but the Army was the only place where I truly felt a sense of belonging. I was capable at my work. People relied on me. Around 2019, things started to shift gradually. At first, Emily got annoyed when I called during her girls' nights and began mentioning how her friend Megan had divorced her husband and was now thriving on her own. She started making remarks about how we had grown apart and didn't share much in common anymore. When I suggested counseling, she dismissed it, saying we were fine and simply going through a phase. Then the late nights at work and the weekends spent away with friends began to take their toll on us. I never encountered the new clothes or the gym membership she seldom used. I should have confronted her, but that is not how I manage things. Never have. My father taught me to think carefully before speaking, to be certain before acting. So, I observed quietly and prepared because my intuition was warning me that something was coming. In life, you learn to rely on your instincts. 2 weeks after receiving the divorce email, I was sitting in the mess hall when my phone buzzed with a notification from our bank app. Another withdrawal of $88,500, nearly everything that remained. I set my fork down and opened the app. The joint account balance had dropped to $22.37. Our savings, $47,000, we had saved over many years, had completely vanished, moved to an account I did not recognize. Mike, one of the guys from my unit, glanced over. "Bad news," I said, locking my phone. "Nah, just some account stuff." That night I called our bank from the base phone center. It turned out Emily had been transferring money for weeks, starting with small sums and then larger amounts. The large transfers began the day after I deployed. I ended the call and stood in the hallway for a long time, watching guys laughing, calling their children, their wives, their parents. Normal life happening all around me while mine was falling apart. That is when Ryan found me. He had heard from Alvarez that I looked like I had seen a ghost at dinner. He asked me what was going on. I do not usually open up about personal matters, but Ryan had pulled me out of a tough spot in Kandahar once. I trusted him, my wife. She emptied our bank accounts and moved her boyfriend into our home. I sent divorce papers while I was on patrol last week. Mike didn't offer the usual responses such as "I'm sorry" or "That's tough" or "You'll find someone better." Instead, he asked, "What is your plan?" I replied, "I'm not sure yet." He nodded and said, "Let me know if you need anything." That night, I couldn't fall asleep. I opened my laptop and accessed our home security system, something Emily had probably forgotten I could do remotely. The cameras revealed a strange truck parked in the driveway, and a man I had never seen walking our dog, holding my coffee mug, and wearing my Seahawk sweatshirt. Emily was laughing in the kitchen I had personally renovated during my last leave. Something shifted inside me. Not anger exactly, but a colder, clearer feeling. I closed the laptop and grabbed my phone. I made a list. Call James, my Army buddy who became a lawyer. Review the Department of Veterans Affairs loan terms. Contact my master sergeant about emergency leave. Examine home refinance papers Emily had mentioned casually last year. Check security on my military pension accounts. I did not feel sad anymore. I didn't even feel angry. I felt focused, like I was preparing for a mission. This was no longer about feelings, but about tactics. At 5 o'clock in the morning, before my shift started, I sent an email to James with the subject line, "Need legal help, discreet and urgent." He answered within an hour, "Call me on a secure line." Only after hanging up that call did I fully understand what I had to do. There was no need for me to shout, no need to threaten, and I did not even have to confront her directly. All I had to do was wait patiently and observe, as her own choices unwittingly created the trap. 2 months later, I returned to American soil. I did not inform Emily of my arrival, did not call or send a message. I simply checked into a motel in downtown Spokane, using an alias, and got in touch with Jake. We met at a diner located about 10 miles outside the city. "You look terrible," he said as he slid into the booth. "Feel the same," I responded. Jake handed me a folder containing everything we had previously gone over, the house deed, loan documents, bank records, and then he pulled out an additional sheet. "I found something curious while digging through your finances," he noted. It was a refinance application featuring my signature, but it wasn't really mine. Somebody had tried to imitate it, but got the middle initial wrong, and the signature strokes were off. I asked if Emily was behind this, though I already suspected so. Jake confirmed without hesitation. A few months ago, she used the house equity to withdraw $330,000. Since the VA loan was solely in my name, my signature was mandatory for that. She forged it, took out a loan against our home, then wiped out our bank accounts and filed for divorce. I could hardly believe how relentless she had been. "It gets worse," Jake added. She had put her boyfriend down as a co-applicant, the one with 2 DUIs and a fraud charge from 2019. I exhaled deeply and asked what my choices were. Jake said there were several, but before that, I needed to decide what I truly wanted. I sat there, gathering my thoughts. I want what is rightfully mine, and I want her to realize the consequences. James smiled and said, "Here is what we do." The following day I drove past our house and noticed her boyfriend's truck was missing, but Emily's car was still parked in the driveway. I stopped down the road and observed quietly. I considered knocking on the door and confronting her, but I knew that was not the plan. Instead, I headed to the bank and met with the loan officer who handled the refinance. I showed him my military ID, the genuine signature on my driver's license, and the forged documents. His complexion turned pale. He told me that he needed to report this immediately. I told him I already filed a police report. That evening I received a text from Emily asking who I had been talking to at the bank. Ryan mentioned someone was asking questions, but I did not reply. The next day I went to the county clerk's office and submitted paperwork disputing the refinance due to fraud. I formally filed a notice that no changes to the property could be made without my involvement. 2 days later, Emily called, but I let it go to voicemail. The message said, "Nathan, we need to talk. The bank has called about the house." I texted back, "What are you doing? If this concerns the divorce, we can talk like adults." Those same words from her email. I did not respond. James contacted me that afternoon, saying they had frozen the refinance funds. There was more news. "Your wife's boyfriend has been using your truck, the one under your name." "Yes," I said. "He got pulled over this morning, driving with a suspended license." After those DUIs, they took the vehicle into custody. Good, I thought. He also had some unusual items inside the truck. There were prescription pads from the dental clinic where Emily works. They were not blank. I closed my eyes. She has been stealing prescription pads, it seems. The police are investigating now. I ended the call and sat on the edge of the motel bed. This situation was growing larger than I had anticipated. Part of me wanted to warn Emily about this, remind her not to fall back into old habits. But then I recalled the security footage of my house, the safety of my dog, my entire life exposed as if it had no value. No, this was the road I had chosen. There was no going back, and to be honest, I did not want to. The next morning, I met with the bank fraud investigator named Ryan Thompson. He was a short man with weary eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. He told me this kind of thing happens more often than expected. As he spread documents over his desk, he explained, "One spouse defrauds, the other notices an opportunity." I asked, "What happens now?" He answered, "We have frozen the funds from the fraudulent refinance, but there is a complication. Some of the money has already been spent." I leaned in and asked, "How much?" He said about half, $14,600. I asked, "Where did it go?" Thompson hesitated. "I am not allowed to disclose that information. It is my house. My name was forged." My funds were stolen. He nodded slowly and then showed me his computer screen. These were the transactions from the refinance account. I went through the list and saw multiple transfers to someone named Daniel Spencer, not Ryan, someone new to me. "Who is Daniel Spencer?" I asked Thompson. I shrugged and said, "This is not really my area, but you should have your lawyer issue a subpoena for those records." I called Jake as soon as I left the bank. Daniel Spencer, the name he repeated, let me run a background check. An hour later, he called back. "Got it. Daniel Spencer is a real estate agent who focuses on fast sales and cash transactions. She was planning to put our house on the market. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Looks like it. The deposits were probably earnest money to kickstart a listing. But here's where it becomes intriguing. Spencer has previously done business with Ryan Jeremy. Ryan is that your wife's boyfriend?" "Yes, they have closed 3 deals together in the last 2 years. I sat down on a park bench trying to absorb everything. So this was not just Emily leaving me for some guy. This was an orchestrated scheme. Maybe Jake said, cautiously, "I researched Jeremy Ryan. He has a habit of getting involved with women going through divorce or whose spouses are deployed. I found 3 cases so far, each time the woman's house is sold well below market price to one of Spencer's clients. Ryan takes a cut and then moves on. And Emily, did she know about this? Hard to tell, maybe she is a victim too, or maybe she was part of it. I rubbed my face. This was no longer just about Emily's betrayal. This was something bigger, a calculated plan, and other military families had fallen prey to it. What do we do? I asked. I have already contacted the FBI's Financial Crime Division. Jake said this case goes beyond anything simple. State lines involve members of the military. Regarding VA loans, they showed interest that evening. I sat alone in my motel room nursing a beer, lost in thought. Was Emily deceiving me throughout our entire marriage, or had she simply been caught up in Ryan's plan? I wondered if it truly mattered anymore. Suddenly, my phone lit up with a message from Emily again. Nathan, please call me. The bank mentioned something about fraud, and Ryan was arrested for driving your truck. I don't understand what is going on. I stared at the screen for several moments before replying cautiously with the question, who is Daniel Spencer? Her response was slow. 3 dots appeared indicating she was typing, then stopped, started again, and then halted. Finally, she wrote, I don't know what you mean. $17,000. I saw multiple transfers and a house listing. 10 minutes passed without any reply. Then she messaged, it's not what you think. Feeling overwhelmed, I switched off my phone and tried to rest. The following morning, Jake called to inform me that the FBI wanted to meet with me. They had been investigating Ryan and Spencer for several months. I was not the first person involved, but might be the one to crack the case wide open. Upon receiving that divorce notification, a strange sense of relief washed over me. Not because my marriage ended, but because the truth finally started to emerge. I met the FBI agents at their Spokane field office. Agent Patel and Agent Donovan recorded my statement and collected all documents Jake and I had put together. Your case helps show a repeated pattern, explained Agent Patel. This shows intent, making it an organized conspiracy rather than separate incidents. When I asked about Emily, my ex-wife, the agents exchanged glances. Donovan spoke cautiously. We are still figuring out how much she is involved. I wondered if she ever mentioned any money problems or felt pressured to sell the house. I remembered her often complaining that we were financially strained due to the house and that we should downsize. But I never saw a real need since our mortgage payments were affordable with my income. Patel made a note and asked when this all began. About 6 months ago, around the time she likely met Ryan, I replied. Donovan then asked about the refinance. I said I was never informed she did it. She had even forged my signature while I was deployed. More questions followed with additional notes taken. After we finished, Patel gave me his business card, saying, we will contact you. Meanwhile, do not confront Emily or Ryan. We have to gather evidence carefully. I nodded in understanding. That evening, I returned to our neighborhood and parked a short distance from our house. Ryan's truck was back, so he must have retrieved it from the impound lot. Emily's car was absent. Then my phone vibrated with a message from Emily. We need to talk face to face. Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow. Over breakfast, I showed the text to Jake. He warned me, don't go. Nothing good will come from meeting her now. I promised, I won't, but I want to see what she's doing. While she thought I would meet her, we drove to our house at 9:30 in the morning and parked across the road. At 9:45, Emily stepped outside, entered her car, and drove off toward Riverfront Park. What now? Jake asked. Now, we wait, I said. About 20 minutes later, a car pulled up with a real estate agent's logo displayed on the door. Daniel Spencer and Ryan came out to welcome him. They exchanged words in the driveway before heading inside. Should we follow them? Asked James. I shook my head, explaining that last year I had installed security cameras both inside and outside the house, which automatically upload footage to cloud storage. James grinned and said he had never heard me mention that before. I pulled out my phone and launched the security app, angling the screen so James could see clearly. Spencer and Ryan were inside our living room. Spencer was snapping pictures while Ryan pointed out various details of the home. I turned up the volume so we could hear their conversation. Spencer mentioned, we should have it listed by the end of the week. I already have a buyer interested with a cash offer as always, he added. Ryan asked about the amount and Spencer replied, $420,000 is the current offer. We listed at $470,000. They agreed to $420,000 and everyone is happy. When Ryan brought up concerns about the husband, Emily, Spencer waved the question away lightly, saying, military men like that always cause a fuss, but they face deployments and serious responsibilities. Eventually, he'll settle just to make it stop. I turned to James and asked if he was capturing this. James was already recording the feed on his phone, saving every single word. I sent the security footage access link to Agent Patel with a brief message saying, "Happening now." Half an hour later, our home was completely surrounded by FBI vehicles. I watched from a distance as agents led Spencer and Ryan out in handcuffs. My phone rang. It was Agent Patel. She confirmed they had recorded Spencer and Ryan discussing their fraudulent scheme on tape, along with charges for conspiracy, wire fraud, and an attempt to sell under false pretenses. "Regarding the property obtained through deceit, we are going to require a formal statement from you, of course," I replied. Then Mr. Briggs mentioned that your wife has just arrived at the location and appears upset. I glanced down the street and saw Emily standing on our lawn, her hands covering her mouth, watching as FBI agents removed boxes of documents from our house. I asked, "What will happen to her?" Patel responded that it would depend on what she knew and what we wanted to do. I observed Emily for a moment, thinking of our 13 years of marriage, the early years full of happiness before everything changed into what it had become. I said, "I just want what is fair." The federal case progressed rapidly after that. Ryan and Spencer both agreed to plea bargains, accusing each other and several others involved in a scheme spanning 3 states, targeting military families. Emily insisted she was unaware of the bigger plan and claimed Ryan had convinced her that I was hiding money and intended to leave her with nothing. She said the refinancing was his idea and that she had simply followed along. Perhaps that was true, or maybe not. Either way, she accepted a settlement that involved full repayment of the stolen money, relinquishment of any rights to the house or my military pension, and a signed confession admitting to the forgery. In return, I chose not to pursue criminal charges. Our divorce was finalized 6 months after that email from Kandahar, clean and without fault, considering everything. On the day the final documents were signed, I received a call from Agent Patel informing me that Ryan had been sentenced to 8 years for fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. Spencer received 12 messages saying, "You might want to know." "Thank you," I said. "There is something else." Emily added, "We uncovered proof they have done this to 11 other military families. Your case helped us identify the pattern. Those families could recover their money thanks to you." After we finished the call, I sat on the porch of my rental apartment, watching the sunset reflecting on those other families. Other men who had deployed believing their homes and marriages were secure only to return to emptiness. I had not planned on being the one to expose Ryan and Spencer's scheme. I only wanted what was rightfully mine, but sometimes life unfolds in unexpected ways. My phone vibrated a text from Emily saying, "I never meant for things to end this way." I did not reply. There was nothing left to say. A year later, I sold the house. I could not bear living there any longer. Too many memories, too much betrayal embedded in those walls. I used the money to buy a small cabin outside Missoula, Montana. 2 bedrooms, 10 acres of land, and a creek flowing behind it, no neighbors for miles. I took early retirement from the Army. 20 years was enough. I had given more than enough. I got a dog, a German Shepherd named Scout, started doing carpentry jobs for locals, nothing elaborate, but it kept my hands busy and paid the bills. My military pension covered the rest. Sometimes I thought about Emily, wondering where she had ended up. Mike heard she moved back to her hometown in Oregon, working at another dental office trying to start fresh. I guess I did not hate her. I no longer felt much about it, honestly. She had made her decisions, and so had I. One evening I received a letter from a woman in Fort Worth, whose husband was serving in the Navy overseas, when Ryan and Spencer had attempted to carry out their scheme against her. The FBI had given her my name as part of the investigation. "You do not know me," she wrote, "but you saved our home. Thank you. We stood our ground when it would have been easier to simply give up." I read the letter twice and then placed it on my refrigerator. On some days when the silence grew too heavy or the memories too vivid, I would look at that letter and remind myself that something positive had come out of everything. The last I had heard, Ryan was still behind bars, and Spencer as well. For once, the system had worked properly. As for me, I was finding my way forward quietly one day at a time, creating something new that could not be taken away, faked, or betrayed, something that belonged entirely to me alone.